I think that comes down to what are we going to use this tool for? And I think it has the potential to, um, first of all, remove some drudgery. Um, I've used it to sort through data and pull out, I want to know the number of students that have this particular data point. And it can do that for me, and I can spot check it and make sure that, okay, it looks okay. And that
Right.
saves a lot of time. So it can save some drudgery. It can, you mentioned writing. I agree. I've used it to write an executive summary that was fantastic and would have taken me an hour. Um,
Right.
but, the right tool for the right task, I might say at this point.
Right. Do you have any idea why the hallucinations are happening? Because some of them are pretty basic, right? Like it would be good. I mean, we humans could do this too, but it would be good if a chatbot could say, "I don't know," or I'm not sure. And
Yeah.
I really wonder if the hallucinations are because they're being trained on humans, and humans are
Mm,
just so fallible that we will just, instead of saying "I don't know," we'll just make something up, or
yeah.
we just have like I wonder if it's becoming more human, and that's why there are
Right.
hallucinations. Because some
Right.
of the stuff is like, can you give me like this math equation? I did something for something a while ago, and I just looked at the number and like, oh no, that's got to be wrong. And so I did it myself, and
Hmm.
sure enough, it was wrong. And I
Yep.
would have thought, math of all things,
Very
how is there a
straightforward.
hallucination or an error for math from a computer? So have you any insight into that?
Well, you speak to the need of a new chatbot that has a bit more humility. So, I think
Right.
someone should invent that. They could call it hubris or something.
Right.
Um, I think,
I love that.
I- you know, I'm just speculating. This is not my area of expertise in terms of how these LLMs operate. Um, but one thing that I keep coming back to is the chatbot can only think with the data that it's given. So
Hmm.
we as humans are taking in data all the time. We're through our senses, and the chatbot is not connected to all of the things that we're connected to. Um, it. I'm thinking of some hallucinations that I experienced just in, say, looking up. I want to know all of the particular people in this city that do X, and it invented some people. And going back, I can kind of see how it got there. In that it doesn't know context. So it could see some partial information that would consider that this person is in this category, but I, as a human, understand like, oh, they didn't mean that phrase that way in the way that I meant it.
Hmm.
And so, they don't know to your point, they don't know what they don't know, and they don't understand the cultural significance of things in the same way that humans do. And because they can only think with the information that they have, they assume that's all there is. Um, and as humans, we know, first of all, we know a little more,
Do
but
we?
we also know that we don't know. Well, we
Because
should.
yeah, we should, but I mean, it's so funny. Okay, so one of my favorite, I'm gonna quick tangent. One of my favorite TV shows of all time was Westworld. I'm not
Mhm.
sure if you saw it at all. Did you see it?
I saw a little bit.
Okay, so the first two seasons were definitely worth watching. Three and four, just superfluous TV. But the first two seasons was really an examination, in my opinion, of human consciousness. And
Hmm.
so every time they were discussing the hosts, the humanoids, in my opinion, they were still discussing human consciousness of
Hmm.
how they make them work. And
Hmm.
what you were just saying kind of seemed to me like it could have been slotted as a monologue into that show. Whereas it says, the computer, what do you say? The computer only knows what it knows and it doesn't know that there's other things. But
Mm.
I think we're all kind of like that. Like I'm not putting myself above this. I'm sure there's so many things where, I try to check myself to say, what are the unknown unknowns, or
Mm.
at least acknowledge that they're there. But sometimes you don't really know until you actually see it, or it's been put in front of you. So I still think that's kind of us.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, uh, you mentioned this earlier, and I brought up the word. Mentioned kind of in-person dialogue earlier, and I brought up the word embodied, and I think that's something
Hmm.
that's coming up. There are times I think in research. where we kind of consider students to be brains on sticks, and that's not the human being. And though we still don't know how consciousness arises, it seems that really it's our whole body that contributes to our mind and our sense of consciousness. So when we're talking about the information that people use in order to understand a situation, to understand what's going on, um, whether consciously or not, we are taking in body language, we are taking in tone of voice, we're taking in eye movement. We're taking in all of these factors that you can only um, gather when you are embodied.
Hmm.
And there, until, I hope this doesn't happen, until AI chatbots are fully like plugged into the human body, there's no way they can have all of that information, and so there's no way that they can know everything that a human would know.
Right.
Um, so I'm kind of mixing scenarios here. If we're just talking about a person to person conversation, I think that's really where this comes in. Um, but I think that's how I would characterize that distinction, is that because we are embodied and because so much of our sense of what is going on is characterized not necessarily by words, but by all of the other human expressions that are coming. Um,
Hmm.
there's a lot more going on.
Right. Yeah. Not to mention, if it can't actually feel, then the decisions it's going to make are going to be a little bit skewed as well. If there's a lack of, this idea of empathy. But yeah, I think that's why I like these conversations so much, because I mean, even for us, I'm reading a book right now. Came out maybe 5 years ago, called Weird, and it's about. Have you heard of it?
Yes,
Right. And so the idea is that an acronym for like a lot of our studies for the past how many years have
right.
come from weird nations. Was it
Yeah,
Western, educated,
educated.
industrial, rich, and democratic?
Yeah, yeah.
Not to mention all these studies were done on like undergraduate students, which is kind of
Right,
a joke if we think about it, right? And
right.
so we've basically constructed a society kind of fulfilling the prophecy of what all these studies and science were perpetuating over time. And so
Hmm.
we're thinking we are these people. This is what this means for psychology. This is what this means for this. And we were kind of learning together for all these things that are kind of not unsubstantiated, but they're really a small segment of the world and even of a society if it's only on these college campuses in these specific cities for people from these certain families. And
Right.
so that kind of sounds like maybe how some AI training might happen, because until it can kind of not only scour the internet and realize what stories and history can be integrated into this knowledge of humanity, then yeah, like I'm optimistic. Like I really want AI to be a benefit to us and continue to be a
Hmm.
benefit to us. But I think it's a bit naive if we look away from all the train wrecks that might be in the future. So I guess to segue from there, um, I would love to hear, because you've obviously thought about this a lot, which is great under the context of education.